Hi, I'm Dr. Nancy Lonsdorf, Johns Hopkins and Stanford trained physician, mind-body specialist, and founder of High Performance Brain Pro. And I'd like to talk to you today about unresolved emotions and their effect on our health. Have you ever had something happen to you where you had feelings that just hung on afterwards? It was so upsetting and you just can't get rid of them no matter what you try. Perhaps it was something in your personal life, such as a friend betrayed your trust, or a spouse ran off with someone else. Or maybe it was at work where a boss sabotaged your promotion, or your business partner stole the company right out from under you. These things happen, and all of us have something upsetting happen to us in our life, and it can be really hard to get over it. So let's take a look at one of the what is considered to be noblest ways of helping ourselves get over something, and that is forgiving. And indeed, research does indicate there are mental and physical health benefits of practicing forgiveness. But there is a dark side to forgiveness. So let's take a look at the data. So health benefits associated with practicing forgiveness include reduced anxiety and depression, enhanced psychological well-being, improved heart health, strengthened immune system, and, not surprisingly, better sleep. Research identifies two kinds of forgiveness. One, it terms emotional forgiveness, and that is described as the internal process or practice of one, releasing any negative emotions as they come up, such as resentment or anger, and two, replacing them with purposely positive feelings like compassion or empathy or sending love to the person. The second type of forgiveness is called decisional forgiveness, and that is when we make a conscious choice or decision to basically give up on getting back at the person or having nothing to do with them, but not necessarily practicing positive emotions towards them. So let's take a look at forgiveness and health in older adults, those over 50. This community survey done in Detroit looked at a cross-section of 380 adults 50 years of age and older. And it asked them to rate three things. First, they reported how severe the offense that was done against them, either mild or severe. Secondly, they rated how likely they are to practice forgiveness towards that person or situation. And three, they rated their health, a self-health rating, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best of health and 1 being poor health. Now, I wanted to make the point that in older adults, it's particularly important because, one, the body is aging and health problems tend to be manifesting in that phase of life, whether it's hypertension or heart disease or immune dysfunction, etc. So adding something that might be negative or positive to health could have a bigger impact than at other times of life. So here we find, no surprise, those people who said the transgression against them was not very severe, it was kind of mild, they actually reported better health than those who said something really bad had been done to them. But here's the surprise. Practicing forgiveness failed to moderate the effect on health of having a severe transgression. But not only that, actually, it appeared that practicing forgiveness was worse for your health if it was something bad that had happened than not trying to forgive at all. So you see the high forgivers here had a bigger drop between the mild transgression and the high severity. So they were good doing forgiveness as long as it was mild, but when they started to try to forgive or practice forgiveness, when it was something severe, they actually had a bigger drop in their self-health rating than those who didn't forgive at all. So the key points here is that high forgivers experience more negative health effects than low forgivers when it was high severity issue. The low forgivers did not get off scot-free. If the offense was by a non-spouse, that was linked to worse health outcomes for them. So what explains this surprising negative health effect of forgiving in a severe transgression? Well, the researchers postulate that possibly it could be that those people are suppressing emotions. They actually have those negative feelings still, but they're kind of covering them up and trying to pretend in a way or force themselves to have a different kind of feeling. And that actually we're going to find is not so good for our health. So how many of you have done this? I think we all have. Somebody asks you, hey, how you doing? Maybe they notice that when we're not looking, when we think no one's looking, that maybe our expression on our face, is showing that maybe we're worried about something. And we just say, oh, hi, oh, I'm fine, everything's great. But behind it, really, we don't feel that way at all. So who cares really? That just seems like a normal social thing to do. Well, it turns out that this has been researched. And what did they find? They found that there's a price to emotional suppression. And in a communication or a relationship situation with two people meeting or talking, it actually disturbs or disrupts the communication. It impairs communication and it increases blood pressure in the person suppressing, but really fascinatingly also in the other person. The other person's blood pressure goes up. It also reduces that rapport or their connection, which makes sense, and it inhibits further development of the relationship. So that's a big price to pay for trying to just, look good and pretend that you're fine when you're not. And as it says here, versus a natural, you don't have to, give the biggest negative drama, but it says even a tempered response where maybe you say, well, I've had better days. But you're not trying to say, oh, everything's great. So emotional suppression and mortality, where the rubber meets the road is, of course, our lifespan. So what is it doing to suppress our emotions? This is a very fascinating study of 729 participants who took the US survey called the General Social Survey in 1996 and were followed up for 12 years. 12 years later, those participants were looked at in terms of who was still alive and who was not. And then they related that to their scores in emotional suppression. Were they big emotional suppressors or were they emotional expressors? So here are the 6 survey questions in the GSS scale, and just in case you want to evaluate yourself. So if you say yes to these top 4, then you're more emotionally suppressing, and then these last 2 are reverse scored. All right, so I keep my emotions to myself. I often don't tell my friends something that I think will upset them. 3, I try to be pleasant so others won't get upset. 4, when I'm anxious, I try not to worry anyone else. 5, I'm not afraid to let people know my feelings. And 6, when I'm angry, I let people know it. Responses were scored on a 5-point scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. All right, so what did they find? They found that those who were in the highest 25% of emotional suppressors versus the lowest 25% actually had increased mortality. That was very significant. All-cause mortality, dying of any cause, including accidents, that was increased by 30% for the high suppressors. Cancer mortality was increased by 70% and cardiovascular mortality by nearly 50%. Now, what does that mean to us in our personal life and lifespan? Well, let's take a look at what it did to years of life lived. The years of life that this cost to be a suppressor for all-cause mortality was 3 years. Cancer mortality, over 5.5 years. And cardiovascular mortality, 3.5 years. Now that's pretty significant, especially for people who are over 50. Every year seems to become more precious the older that we get, because we're kind of counting down against, how many do we think we have left? So what did the researchers say? What could be the mechanism? Well, it's well known that chronic stress does impair the immune system and also disturbs the neuroendocrine system. So like the cortisol and the stress responding system, which can affect, of course, metabolic syndrome and promote diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease and all of that. So chronic stress is not a good thing. And of course, immune system weakening can leave us prone to getting more infections or even cancers. Secondly, that people, when they're suppressing their emotions, may be turning to unhealthy coping behaviors, such as eating too much sugar or drinking too much alcohol, or avoiding things like maybe they just don't feel like going to exercise. And furthermore, we see that when one suppresses emotions, it does reduce the interaction, the rapport that we have with other people and the development of the relationship. So people may experience reduced social support, and therefore they also lose that opportunity to talk about their emotions and maybe get other perspectives. So if forgiveness doesn't help, in something really strong, what are we to do? What can we do with these difficult emotions? Short of therapy, obviously, if it's interfering with your life, causing significant anxiety, depression, or sleeplessness, then of course you should see a professional who deals with mental health issues, or at least talk to your primary care doctor about it. But how can we get over it? Well, it turns out that there are mechanisms to do it. And I'm going to talk about it in our next episode. We're actually going to have a specialist on, Dr. Zeev Soferman, who is a master coach. And he and I have been coaching people on these kinds of difficult issues for the last 15 years in my practice, and had extremely good success in people basically transforming, meaning feeling differently at the end of their coaching without trying to feel differently. And when they think about it later, some people have said it's like a line in air, meaning actually borrowing from kind of the yoga tradition, saying that as we get more and more evolved and develop our consciousness more and more, then whatever happens to us on a relative level of life has less impact to us on a deeper level. So a line in stone would be one that's going to stay there a long time, kind of etched in there. A line in water would be something that goes away faster, and a line in air is almost like it didn't happen. Metabolizing to bliss is another expression from the yoga tradition. And in the end, being comfortable in your own skin, which our clients often describe, and at peace with yourself and your life. So I look forward to joining you in the next episode when we speak with Master Coach Zeev Soferman and talk about how can one truly transform and feel differently without trying to feel differently. See you next time.